With the economic recovery barely sputtering along, are higher taxes really the solution? Well, CNBC contributor and former Labor Secretary Robert Reich has argued for significantly raising taxes on the rich. An op-ed in today's Wall Street Journal fingers Mr. Reich and reminds us that he called for a 70% marginal tax rate not too long ago. But here to defend the case, it's the indefensible case. But Robert Reich, the author of Aftershock, The Next Economy in America's Future, he'll do it. Also with us is Dan Mitchell, senior fellow at the Cato Institute. You know, looking at those pictures of the marches in Greece on the government in Athens, Bob, I would say a 70% marginal tax rate, you'll have all of America marching on Washington against it. You really want this?
Well, I doubt it, Larry. And actually, I did not call for a 70% marginal tax rate right now. In fact, while we're still in an economic slump, I would go along with simply raising the highest marginal tax rate next year back to 39%, the Clinton highest marginal tax rate. But eventually, we're going to have to deal with a budget deficit, and the rich are going to have to pay their fair share. Before 1980, we had always a highest marginal tax rate, at least 70%. During Eisenhower, it was 91%. Now, I know, given the tax cuts in terms of the credits and the deductions, yes, it was less than 91%, but still very, very high. And if we're going to get serious about deficit reduction, we do have to get serious about raising taxes, particularly on the wealthy, who, after all, have claimed a larger and larger percentage of total income.
I can't wait for this. Now, let me go to Dan Mitchell. Dan, in Alan Reynolds' article this morning, where he fingered Bob Reich's 70% tax rate, Alan makes the cases you won't get the revenues and you won't get the growth. Is that right?
I think Alan hit the nail on the head. Let me give you two figures that I think really underscore this. In 1980, when we had that 70% top tax rate that Bob was talking about, rich people, as defined by those paying earning more than $200,000 a year, they paid $19 billion to Uncle Sam. By 1988, when the top tax rate was all the way down to 28%, they paid $99 billion. So we collected 5 times as much revenue at a 28% rate as we did at a 70% rate at the higher income levels, where people have lots of capital and lots of discretion over the timing, level, and composition of their income. There are huge Laffer curve effects. So I'm not going to bother making the economic argument to Bob. I'm not going to bother making the fairness argument. I'm simply going to try to say you won't get the money. If you want to soak the rich, keep their tax rates low.
By the way, Robert,
I don't want to soak the rich, and I do think that the economic argument and the fairness argument are both very, very important. But with regard to Alan Reynolds' data this morning, I took a look at those data. I was sort of interested in where he got the data. Turns out that the biggest correlation between actually the percentage of GDP that is accounted for by tax revenues and everything else, biggest correlation is whether the economy, not surprising, whether the economy is growing or the economy is slumping. 1980, we were going into recession. 1988, we were doing very well. You look at all of those data. He selected the data based upon whether the economy was growing or not. That is the most important variable.
Well, all right.
But that has to do with whether tax rates are high, at least in part. Of course, there are lots of other factors, but this is why we're in trouble today. Bush gave us a lot bigger government. Obama promised hope and change, but we're getting more bigger government, the threat of higher taxes, more government control of health care, the Dodd-Frank bailout bill. You can't turn around without seeing some evidence of the Europeanization of America.
By the way, speaking of the Europeanization, I just can't help myself. I want to throw this in. I looked at the tax rates in Greece. Beleaguered Greece, about which we are talking. Their top personal tax rate is 40%, not 70%. Their top corporate tax rate is 23%. Ours, by the way, is 35%. So, Robert Reich, you're going to
wait a minute, Larry. Are you suggesting the problem of Greece is that their tax rates are too low? That's what I just heard you say.
No,
that's a very awkward, very interesting argument for you to make.
They have a 23% VAT tax, and that's the austerity tax. But I just want to say, your proposals would put us after Greece. It would make us worse off if anyone in Greece ever paid their taxes.
Now, let me.
So why would you want to jeopardize? I mean, U.S. would not be remotely competitive against Greece, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Asia, Latin America. You'd put us out of business, Robert.
Oh, come on, Larry. I mean, look at a couple of things. First of all, if you look at the record between the end of the Second World War and 1980, average economic growth per year, was about 3.5%, even though we had, at a minimum, 70% tax rate on the highest income earners.
But that includes the Kennedy tax cuts, which dropped them from 90 to 70, creating a tremendous incentive. So the direction of the change is very important.
Well, yes,
Dan Mitchell knows more about this than I do.
You're saying the direction of change is more important than the absolute level. I'm saying but I thought you were saying a moment ago that the absolute level is critically important. If the absolute level is not all that important, then why do you object to my 70% on the top?
Going from 35 to 70 would be a disaster. And I also want to make this case. In terms of just taxing rich people, Robert, nobody believes it. The middle class in this country know darn well when politicians talk about taxing the rich, it's the middle class that's going to come next because they have the real money in the tax system, Robert. That's the political flaw.
Wait a minute. That is not true. I mean, look at it. In 1980, Larry, listen to me. 1980, the top 1% took home 10% of total income. Just before the great crash of 2007,
I'm not making that
the
case.
top 1% was taking home 23.5% of total income.
The minute
are you saying? Wait a minute, Larry. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Are you saying that the rich will find ways of escaping from a high tax?
No. I was saying even if you could collar the rich, there's not near enough money to balance the budget, and the middle class will see those top tax rate increases and know that their ox is going to be gored next.
Well, given the budget. Wait a minute. This is important. One quick point.
Please,
given the budget deficit we have right now, if the middle class doesn't believe that they are going to be really imposed upon in terms of high taxes, particularly if the rich don't pay their fair share, then somebody is joking on making a very bad joke on other people.
The left wing wants a value-added tax. That's what we need to worry about in the long run.
There you have it. And by the way, we could cut spending a little bit, too, and grow the economy by incentivizing lower tax rates. Robert Reich, you're the greatest. Thank you very much. Dan Mitchell, thank you very much.